All right, so strap yourselves in because this deep dive takes us right into the middle of things in the Ukraine conflict. We've got, this brand new interview with Zelensky, and, well, he doesn't hold back.
Yeah.
It's not just about, like, his trip to the U.S. that's coming up. It's about, I think, understanding how this man sees a path to peace, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, you're right to pick up on that because his message, I think, is very, very clear. It's strength before diplomacy.
Okay.
He's going to present a peace plan, but only when Ukraine is calling the shots.
Yeah.
When they're in a position of power.
So he's heading to the U.S., but he's almost saying don't expect a whole lot of negotiating until WE decide it's time. Why is that timing so important to him, do you think?
I think it boils down to how he sees Putin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of analysts would agree with this. That Putin only respects power. He doesn't respect, pleas for peace.
Right.
And so if Ukraine is, on the back foot, if they're already, on the run, as it were, then any sort of negotiation is just a Russian victory waiting to happen.
So it's like that old saying, speak softly but carry a big stick. But it seems like Zelensky's skipping the softly spoken part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this isn't just some sort of abstract theory. We see this throughout history, this dynamic.
Right.
Even if you think back to like the Treaty of Versailles after World War I, the Allies negotiating from a position of strength, they imposed very harsh penalties on Germany, which some argue created the very conditions that led to World War II. Now, whether that's entirely accurate or not is debatable, but it just shows how peace, when it's dictated by a victor, can have these unforeseen and these long-lasting consequences.
Right. It makes you realize peace isn't just this like happy ending. It's full of these power plays.
Absolutely.
But what, in Zelensky's mind, what does that path actually look like?
Well, he lays out a three-pronged approach in this interview.
Mm-hmm.
First, he wants security guarantees from the West, and I mean ironclad. I mean serious commitments.
Yeah.
Potentially even NATO membership, which is a huge.
Yeah.
That's the big one, right? That's the one that Russia really doesn't want.
Because that brings the big guns to the table, not just like theoretical support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, he wants a clearly defined geopolitical standing for Ukraine on the world stage.
Okay.
No more of this like buffer zone, ambiguity. He wants, in no uncertain terms, he wants recognition that Ukraine are ends of a player and their voice, will be heard.
Gotcha.
And then finally, he was very adamant about getting robust, both military and economic support.
Right.
But there's a big caveat to that.
What's that?
He wants complete autonomy in how that support is used.
Okay.
Remember that quote, and that we have to be free how to use one or another item.
Right.
It's not just about weapon systems. It's about the freedom to make decisions, strategic decisions, without constantly having to go back to someone, for approval.
Yeah, he's basically saying, give us the tools and trust us to use them. And I get it. You're a wartime leader. You're in his position. That's going to appeal to you. But how much control is he willing to relinquish, when it comes to, say, U.S. involvement? What does he make of these recent claims from Trump that, I could end this war like that?
That's where Zelensky's famous skepticism comes through. He didn't mince words, stating that sometimes election messages are not very real.
You almost hear the weary sigh in his voice, he's heard it all before. But it's more than just, cynicism.
Right.
It seems like a calculated move to manage expectations and maybe even influence U.S. domestic politics.
Absolutely. He's walking a tightrope here. He needs continued American support, so he can't directly alienate a potential future president. But he's also acutely aware of the dangers of appearing overly optimistic based on campaign rhetoric. Remember, this is a man who's seen firsthand how quickly promises can evaporate in the face of geopolitical realities.
That's a good point.
It's a delicate balancing act. But his skepticism doesn't end with Trump. He also seems deeply wary of Putin's recent talk of negotiations. Is this genuine openness on Putin's part? Or is Zelensky right to be suspicious?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there a chance that Putin's actually open to diplomacy, or could there be a more insidious motivation at play?
Zelensky hinted that Putin might be trying to exploit any perceived cracks in the unified front against Russia. If Putin can convince the world that he's open to dialogue while Ukraine remains resolute, well, that could create tension within the Western alliance.
It's a classic divide and conquer strategy.
Yeah.
By dangling this possibility of a negotiated settlement, Putin could potentially pressure Ukraine into making concessions just to get everyone to the table.
Precisely. And it plays into the narrative Putin's been pushing from the outset, which is that the West is the aggressor, stubbornly prolonging the conflict.
So how does Zelensky counter that? He can't exactly force Putin to negotiate in good faith.
You're right. He can't control Putin's actions, but he can control Ukraine's response. Zelensky's strategy seems to be centered around continuing to make the costs of this war increasingly unbearable for Russia on both the global stage and, crucially, on the home front.
So back to strength again. He's betting that the longer and more costly the conflict, the more Putin will be forced to the negotiating table, whether he likes it or not.
It's a high-stakes gamble, no doubt. But it's also a reflection of the profound transformation Zelensky himself has undergone since the start of this conflict. Remember that poignant moment in the interview? When we first met, you were wearing a suit.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's a subtle observation, but it speaks volumes about how this war has reshaped him, forced him to become a different kind of leader.
He's stepped right out of the world of scripted drama and into a real-life tragedy with the weight of millions on his shoulders. He went from, cracking jokes on stage to rallying a nation against invasion. How does someone even begin to process that kind of shift?
It's almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
And yet Zelensky's personal journey, from actor to wartime leader, mirrors Ukraine's own struggle for survival. He's become a symbol of his nation's resilience, its determination to forge its own destiny.
It makes you wonder, listening to him talk about this, if this, unexpected resilience, this strength, if that's part of what he's hoping to inspire in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because, he doesn't just call for global unity, he's practically begging for it.
Right.
Why is that unity so important to him?
Well, I think Zelensky understands that Ukraine's fight is about way more than just territory.
Yeah.
Right? This
Yeah.
is about upholding, a rules-based international order.
Yeah.
If Russia can just, roll in and take what it wants by force, think about the precedent that sets.
Right.
For every other nation that, that might have territorial ambitions,
It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is it, this fair, no further.
Mm.
But, it got me thinking about, we talk about this global unity, but it feels very abstract.
Right.
What does that actually look like beyond just condemning the invasion?
Yeah, you're right. It's about, you got to translate those words into action, right? It's
Huh.
about maintaining those, tough sanctions against Russia, even
Yeah.
when, frankly, they pinch us economically.
Yeah.
It's about providing Ukraine with, the military aid they need to actually defend themselves.
Yeah.
Not just enough to sort of keep their heads above water,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, it's about, all of us remembering that this isn't someone else's problem,
Right.
This is a collective challenge to these values of, sovereignty, self-determination that, underpin, the entire international system.
So looking away basically helps no one.
Yeah. And it seems like that's that's Zelensky's message, apathy is its own form of complicity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think just as importantly, he seems to be saying that true strength comes from unity, right?
Right.
From a, shared commitment to a just and lasting peace.
Well, that about does it for our deep dive into Zelensky's latest interview.
Yeah.
We covered a lot. We talked about his strategy of this idea of peace through strength to the crucial importance of global unity in this conflict.
Absolutely.
We dug into his three-pronged plan for peace, which includes those security guarantees, like we talked about, a defined place for Ukraine on the world stage, and of course the substantial military and economic support, but all while maintaining Ukraine's autonomy and using that support.
Right. And we really grappled with his with his skepticism towards, these promises of quick fixes.
Right.
And his very valid concerns about Putin's true motives for negotiation.
It's a complex situation, and Zelensky's perspective is, just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Of course, yeah, but it's a vital piece,
Oh.
It gives us these really valuable insights into, this is the mind of a leader facing, just extraordinary circumstances.
Right.
So as you all go about your day, think about this. Zelensky clearly believes that a strong Ukraine can force Putin to negotiate a real peace.
Right.
But is strength alone really enough?
That's the question.
And what unseen costs might come attached to this pursuit of power? Until next time, keep asking those tough questions and keep diving deeper with us here on The Deep Dive.